the town is looking for assistance on. One is relating to doing the maps. I think another question that came up was to, whether or not MAPC can help with the public outreach that's required for the plan. And then I took a look at the content of what's been drafted so far. And clearly you've made some strides toward, completing some of the required elements of the plan. But in looking at it, I also, could identify a number of areas where, I think MAPC could help and figure out ways in which we can make some improvements to the content and to make sure that all of the required pieces of the plan are put in place. So what was forwarded to me was the draft of the first 4 sections of the plan. And just as an example, I looked at the demographic description that's in the plan, and that would need to be fleshed out. The Division of Conservation Services, which is the agency that reviews and approves the plans, would require a lot more information in that section. Just as examples, you'd need some demographic information on housing. It doesn't have to be as detailed as a housing plan would be, but there's going to be a need to add some more information there. Jobs and employment data would need to be included. And you have a lot of 2010 census data in there, but we'd also need to add information on population trends going forward. We typically have identified data that we would include in terms of future trends that would take us at least to the year 2030. And while we're very close to having the 2020 census data in hand, we're not going to see it for about another year. But in the interim, there are some data that's out there that is more current than 2010, and we would probably fill in some of that data to supplement the 2010 information that's already in there. And another thing that we could help with is certainly doing, preparing charts and tables to illustrate the data so that it's not just straight narrative. Then I looked at some of the information that's been provided in section 4, which is the environmental analysis. You have a lot of good stuff in there, but there again would be some additional information that the Division of Conservation Services is going to want to see. I should preface my remarks by saying that everything is guided by the latest version of the Open Space Planners Workbook, which was dated 2008. DCS would love to have updated it by now, but hasn't been able to. It's pretty much a one-person operation. Melissa Cryan is the person that reviews the plans, and she also manages all the grant programs. So she has her hands full and unfortunately has not been able to update the current guidebook. So one of the things that she's been doing sort of behind the scenes is when you get her comment letters, there are things that she would like to see in the plan that aren't fully fleshed out in the workbook. So she's starting to ask communities to do a little bit more than what's in the guidebook, just because she, through the comment letters that she submits when a plan is given to her for review and approval. So, at this point, I have a good idea as to what she's looking for above and beyond what's in the workbook. And there are certain things, certainly in section 4, that would be included in that category. For instance, climate change. She's not looking for a full thesis on how climate change is impacting open spaces in Nahant, but she's going to want to see that that issue is at least acknowledged. So things along those lines need to be included.
Is that more than what we inserted regarding municipal vulnerability?
That would be a good start, but I think there are a few other things that could be included. Yeah, I noticed that you had the MVP stuff in there, and that certainly would be the basis for a lot of it. But the MVP plans are usually focused a little bit more on, how the town is going to address not only the environmental factors, but the social and public health factors. There might be some additional information that could be included beyond what you have. And then the inventory, you have a lot of information in the inventory, but there are certain things that she wants to see described differently. So in the inventory, for instance, under recreational potential, she doesn't want to, she wants something more than whether there is some potential for additional recreation or recreation in general, and that you have, low, medium, and high. What she's looking for is something more specific, and particularly with the public land. So under recreation, under the use, you would need to add, is it ball fields? Is it basketball courts? Is it tennis courts? And then under recreational potential, are there changes contemplated to the recreational programs that are there? And in a lot of cases, it may be that there is no additional changes. So if Smith Park has a softball field and basketball courts and tennis courts, and it's not likely that Smith Park is going to have any other significant changes, then that's all we need to say. But if the softball field isn't really being used and the town is contemplating changing it to a soccer field, then we would make note of that under the recreational potential column. So you'll need to make changes there. And then there are a couple of other things. There are a couple of columns that would need to be added that aren't in the inventory right now. For instance, the acreage of the open space park needs to be added. So, otherwise it's in reasonably good shape, but there are a few things that need to be tweaked in the inventory, and that's always a challenge for communities to do that. But I think you have a pretty good start with what you've done so far. So I guess, and the other thing I noticed that, when you were identifying the sections at the very end of the narrative that you have so far, you indicated that section 10 would be a 5-year action plan. I just want to make note of the fact that again, it's not in the workbook, but DCS is allowing communities to do 7-year plans. So you don't have to, but you may want to consider making your action plan a 7-year plan instead of a 5-year. So with that, I think I'll turn it back to you. Just, if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Could you tell us where we find the census data outside of the, you said you wanted more update since 2010. Where do I go to find that stuff?
It's, you can do it through the Census Bureau. What you'd be looking for is what's called the American Community Survey. And those are 5-year snapshots for all the important demographic data for most towns. I'm not sure what the most recent one would be for Nahant, but there should be something that's more current than just the 2010 census data. I think the most recent one that would be available for at least some communities would be 2014 to 2018. You probably won't see anything that'll take you into 2019 yet.
Okay, great.
So I'm trying to figure out sort of where we go from here, because the people that are on the committee right now, we lost a committee person about, a couple months ago. We were the ones that put together this, and I'm trying to figure out how best to proceed going forward. And we have some money that we received from the Community Preservation Act grant last year. And I'm trying to figure out how best to, I guess, to move forward, knowing that we could hire a consultant. But what, I'm just trying to figure out the best way forward.
So, you know, if you wanted us to assist with the completion of the plan, what I can do is draw up a scope of services to cover what we think needs to be done to help you get across the finish line with the plan. And we can do it in such a way as to have you and the committee members do as much of the legwork as you want to do, or if you want us to do all of it, we can scope it out any way that's comfortable for you within the amount of money that you have available. But I'm assuming that some of the priorities for us would be to help shape a community outreach process, because you're going to need it to include a community outreach process, and that has to be described in section 2, and ultimately it will lead to the goals and objectives in sections 6 and 8. I'm assuming that that's something that you might want some assistance with. And then clearly things like doing the maps, give you a scope of services item to do the maps. And then certainly, you know, if there are parts of the plan that you just want us to take the lead on, we can do that. You know, including doing some of the demographic data. And then finally, we can help, you know, just finalize and format the plan, you know, turn some of the narrative into charts and tables just to make it easier for DCS and other readers to understand the plan. And then we can also help you flesh out an action plan based on some of what we hear in the public process. The action plan is going to need to include the specific recommendations, what entity in Nahant is going to take the lead in implementing that action plan recommendation, what the time frame would be over the 7 years. You know, is it short-term, medium-term, long-term, or ongoing? And then help to identify funding sources for some of them. The fact that you have CPA is obvious, is one obvious funding source, but we can also help you identify grant sources that would be available to the town once the plan has been approved. So, you know, if that makes sense, I'm happy to, you know, have us prepare a scope of services and have you take a look at it, and then you can suggest things that need to be added, suggest things that you want deleted because either you want to take the lead on it or however you want to handle it. If that makes sense as a next step.
What other members of the committee think? Nancy, oh wait, let me unmute you.
Um,
Okay.
we had worked on I know community outreach has a lot of facets to it. We had worked on a questionnaire.
Yes, I saw that.
We took it from a number of different sources, and did you have any reaction to that?
Let me pull it up here. Yeah, I mean, it looks pretty typical of the types of surveys that we do, where we, ask about goals and priorities and what the needs are. And you also include, how often do people go to particular facilities. What we find a lot is that people don't always know about particular open space and recreational resources. So we sometimes ask a question similar to, you have whether or not they use it, but, another column might be, are you even aware of it? But I think you cover most of the important types of questions that that we would ask if you were to do a survey from the get-go. One thing that, I don't know how you were planning to distribute it, but we have access to a service called Qualtrics, which is like SurveyMonkey, but it's just a competitor of SurveyMonkey. And if you do it on a setting like that, you don't have to worry about getting of tabulating all the results yourself. It's done automatically through that program. I don't know if you have access to something along those lines to make it easier for you.
So what happens to people who don't have access or facility with computers? We want a broad response to this.
Yeah, so in those instances, we do look for ways that paper surveys can be distributed, and then those get collected, and then the results just have to be inputted into the Qualtrics system. And normally you'd get more responses, but the fact, that we have this whole COVID situation, it's also going to limit how people get, you can't distribute the paper survey as widely as you normally would when people were out and about without the restrictions. So, try and do the best you can under the circumstances. But the survey alone is not going to satisfy DCS in terms of an outreach program. They're going to want to see that there's at least one public meeting. And we've done a lot of public meetings on Zoom. So, we can explain to you how that could be done. And the interesting thing is that we're finding that the way we set them up is that we tend to get more people participating in a public session done on Zoom, because we tend to keep surveys and whatnot open for a longer period of time. And it's just easier for people to just sign on to the computer. They don't have to worry about childcare. They don't have to worry about, getting home from work and then dealing with feeding the kids and stuff like that. They can just sign on to the computer and just participate. We still, if we had our way, there's still nothing like to substitute for the one-on-one conversations that you get in a public meeting. There are drawbacks and there are advantages.
I just had a question, Ellen, about, you know, whether when you do your scope of work, does that include actually coming and looking at the sites and evaluating them for things like ADA and potential goals for the future use and things like that?
Yes, we could do that as well. And typically when we get involved in a project like this, we like to do a site visit just to become familiar with the open space and recreational resources. We don't need to see every single one, but just to get an idea as to what some of the priority sites are. You know, there's a park that you want to invest in the future. And similarly, maybe there was a park that was that had undergone significant improvements a year ago. You know, we'd want to see all of those, and we can assist in doing the ADA assessment as well.
Thank you.
And how, so we know we have the CPA grant money, but we had also applied for some other assistance, and I guess you would draw up a proposal, and would there be various levels of what it would cost depending on what you did and what we did, or, you know, how does that kind of work?
Yeah, we can do it any number of ways. I mean, you know, I can start with the assumption, if this works for you, with the assumption that, you know, we're going to be doing the lion's share of the work. Obviously, we're going to rely significantly on input from you and other folks in town government to get some of the information. And once we figure out how much that might cost, then we would also know how much additional money we might need to add if needed to supplement the amount of money that you have available.
Good.
And then we can add and subtract as needed.
I mean, the report has to be a report, you know, and with all the part of it, you know, we're a pretty small town, so that makes it simpler. I mean, you know, we're a mile square, makes it
Right.
easier than gigantic towns in terms of, you know, assessing all the things. We know we need all the parts, but
There are
But
less parts to deal with.
right.
Coupled with that is the fact that we're such a small town, we have very little in the way of resources at town hall. So there's no staff that's assigned to us. So it's really us, this committee, that's really shepherding this.
Right.
And frankly, from my perspective, it's been difficult to get some information from the town, but that's partly because our town meeting is this Saturday in a field. So, so the town administrator, who's sort of the head town person really with the Board of Selectmen, they've been focused on other things. So I'm hoping that we'll be able to get some additional information that we're lacking once town meeting is over. But we have no staff at town hall that are assigned to us or anything. So it's really us pretty much doing all the work and trying to get as much information as we can out of the town, which includes the you know, Department of Public Works and what they're planning on doing. So I know that there's going to be significant work done on some of our beaches as a result of coastal erosion and flooding. And they're about to file environmental notification forms under MEPA for a fair amount of this work. I just haven't seen it. It was noticed in the newspaper, in the legal notice, but they haven't filed anything yet with MEPA. So I keep looking for that, but as far as I can tell, it hasn't been filed.
Yeah, that's definitely something that you'd want to identify in the plan and make it part of your action plan.
Yeah. And I also think some of the recreation resources, tennis courts, ball fields, basketball courts are out for bid for significant improvement. And
Okay.
that's pending, so I'm not really sure, I'm not quite sure where that is either.
Who's in charge of maintaining your parks? Is it the DPW?
Yeah, it's DPW.
Ralph, how long does it usually take from, say, if we accepted your scope of work to an actual viable, submittable plan? What's usually, in your experience, the turnaround time on that?
If we're doing it from scratch and really running the whole thing, it's about 9 months. But given the fact that you have, done a fair amount of work already, maybe 5 or 6 months.
Okay, thank you.
Margaret, do you have any comments or questions?
No, I think it sounds good, and I would look forward to seeing a scope of work.
All right, so how do we go forward? Do you want to draft something, Ralph, and then get it to me, and then I can submit it? And we can discuss it at a next, an upcoming meeting when we receive it?
Yeah, I think that makes sense. How often do you meet?
We've been meeting pretty much once a month, mostly because it took some time to draft what we had. But I guess it depends on sort of what we have to do, because we can meet more often if we wanted to. But pretty much generally, we've been meeting once a month.
Okay.
And we're waiting for one more appointee, but that hasn't happened yet, so.
Yeah, hopefully I can get something to you, in a week or so.
That would be good, yeah.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Then, then we can figure it out from there.
Okay.
What was the amount of money that the CPC gave you?
30,000.
Does that sound like a lot to you, Ralph, or a little?
No, I think that's pretty good.
Okay. I wasn't sure what the general amount would be for these types of plans, so,
Yeah. No, that's in the ballpark.
okay.
Is there anything, I mean, you listed a whole bunch of things that needed to be done. Is there anything that you could think we could be just working on to help this move along? Or should we just wait until we hear from you?
I wouldn't stop working on, whatever it is that you are trying to do internally. So, if anything that you advance is just one more thing that we don't have to, think about. But, just as an example, if you wanted to take a look at the columns in the inventory and add one for the acreage of the different open basin recreational resources, and also look at, redoing the recreational use column to describe what's there, and then thinking about recreational potential. Paula had mentioned that there was that it looks like there's some plans in the works to make certain improvements to some of the park and recreational facilities. So if some of that's going to result in a change of use in one of those parks, you can identify it there. And if you you know, if it's a major capital improvement, you can identify it in that column as well. So, you know, you can certainly work on that. You know, if you want to try and look at some of the recreational, I mean, some of the demographic data in ACS, the American Community Survey, you can try and flesh some of that stuff out. The employment statistics would come from the Department of Labor and Employment. So,
I mean, does it matter that Nahant kind of has no employment, really?
well, I mean, yeah, I mean, if that's the case, then we probably just need to say it. But what typically is asked is, you know, where do people, you know, I'm sure there's a percentage of people who live in Nahant. They obviously commute out of Nahant to work elsewhere. But at the same time, there are probably some employers in Nahant, and I suspect the biggest one may be just the town and the school department. So, you know, we just need to say that in the plan. And if there's nothing else, then we just say that. But
so the Department of Labor and Employment would have this information for our town?
yeah, they have information for all of towns.
And would they like take it from like a census or something? Where do they get their stuff from?
I think it's a mixture of data that they collect as well as data that is coming from the Census Bureau.
So we could try to look under there and see what we find.
Yeah.
Okay. Is there anything more we could do with that census at this point, or should we just, I mean, you suggested adding, have you ever heard of it? Like, our town's really small, so it's, you know, we could add that, but, or have you not heard of it? But I mean, is there anything more you would want? I mean, it's not in the form of a census, but if it was going to be put on some kind of a platform or something, then we would need to be making it formally up to be mailed or some, you know.
Yeah, the format would need to change just to so that you could get the data in an easily readable form.
Right.
And you know, again, that's something that we can do. You know, I think if we were to take a look at it, you know, we might tweak some of the questions. But I think from a content point of view, you've really covered a lot of the kinds of things that we would ask if we were doing a survey from scratch.
Okay, great.
All right, does anybody have anything else?
So I guess I had one more question, which was, it's a little hard because there are standards we're supposed to adhere to, but they're not written anywhere, you know, exactly now. Is there some plan of some town that you would specifically recommend we might look at as an example?
Yeah, there probably would be. I'm trying to think of community that
Well, Ellen, what were the towns that you identified? It was Cohasset and
Cohasset,
Rockport?
Rockport, and I looked at several others, Swampscott.
yeah, those are the ones that I would think of.
Yeah.
I just didn't remember offhand how recently they might have done a plan.
Those were all fairly recent, and that's why I focused on them.
Oh yeah, actually Cohasset I knew about.
Yeah, but
yeah.
theirs is quite well formatted. That's a nice format. I liked it. Very readable.
Yeah.
So yeah, I thought those were good examples of maybe updated plans that probably had these additional guidelines incorporated.
Yes, and Cohasset, you know, is not a big town. It, you know, it has obviously more people than you do, but it doesn't have a lot of people.
Right.
Geographically, it's bigger because there aren't too many that are smaller than you.
Yeah.
There are none.
Is Nahant maybe Gosnold is smaller.
Possibly.
But I think those would be good examples because those are all coastal communities as well,
Right.
and they
Yeah,
raise.
Yeah.
So that might be good comparables to
Mhm.
look at.
Great, thank you.
All right, great. So do we want Ralph to go forward based on the discussion?
I say yes, Ellen.
Okay.
Yes,
Margaret?
Nancy?
Yes.
Nancy? Okay, I say yes, so, yeah, so that's great. We look forward to receiving the proposal and working with you on this.
Yeah, likewise. So I'll get something to you week to 10 days, something like that, and then you can take a look at it and we can move forward from there.
Okay, great.
Thanks, Ralph.
All right,
Okay.
thank you, Ralph.
Okay.
You're welcome to stay, but we're almost done, I think, so.
Okay. I'll probably sign off.
Okay,
Okay.
Bye.
all right, thank you, Ralph.
Thank you.
Thank you
Have a
so
good
much.
night.
Too. Well, that was helpful.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was helpful.
Yeah, at least I feel like we've made some progress. I mean, it looks like you could just dump this whole thing in their hands and pay tons of money and have them do it. But that's not what we want to do, or that's not what our town has done.
Yeah.
But, how are we supposed to know we're supposed to do these things if there's no guidelines? It's
Right.
crazy, but whatever.
It's typical. Sorry, it's typical.
Okay. So could we just, do you think it's reasonable that we could just move forward a little bit on some of these things that he talked about, or is that not?
I think we could certainly work on the inventory, fleshing that out, look at some of those towns' plans and see how they did their inventory. I think that would be a good place to start. That would be more specific to our knowledge maybe than his, so maybe that's a good place for us to focus.
Yeah. And one thing I did on the inventory when I sent it to him, this came from Dana. He had a lot of comments on it. And you'll see that the column, there's a notes column. And I don't really think we need that, but it was more as I decided to keep it when I was sort of formatting everything in order to just make us aware ourselves of some of the questions and things that that he had highlighted. I also, one of the things he was never able to get is Tony's reaction to this. And because I know that they were working on, public ways that are blocked, the Little Nahant issues. And we've never really been able to get a good response from the town really on this. And I don't know who other than Tony we can actually talk to about it.
Well, as far as that goes, we should be able to get some info from maybe Dan Scripp and the planning board, because they're both working on those public rights of way, if that's specifically what you're talking about.
Yeah, because a lot of the comments have blocked by abutters, municipal right of way, and we're not sure what, there was some question marks when Dana went through and did this. So, but I think I agree with you, Ellen. The inventory is a good place to start, and we can start working on some of those questions, maybe with the planning board.
Yeah, I think for some of the stuff, the planning board might be a good resource. But maybe after town meeting, as you indicated, Paula, Tony might have a little more time in his schedule, maybe. I know it's busy times for him, so, but maybe we can get one meeting out of him, or one-to-one or something with him.
Yeah, or like a point of contact, like who should we talk to?
Right, right.
about
Yeah.
some of these.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I don't know if everybody knows, but Bobby Jo Blair has resigned.
Right.
Oh, didn't know.
Yeah. Very
Yeah.
sad. Yeah.
She's leaving after town meeting, so her last day is Saturday. So, so that's a loss, I think.
Yeah, very big loss. Yeah.
So,
That means somebody else has got to be trained before they can help us.
exactly.
So in the old inventory, there are no measurements or definitions of what the areas of all these were.
That should be fairly easy to find, the acreage, if that's what you mean. Do you mean the acreage,
Yeah.
Nancy?
Isn't that what he said we needed?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that should be fairly easy to locate. I can look into that.
And yeah, the assessor's record should help with that.
Right.
For the thing is it going to help with some of them, but maybe not all of them. Like the municipal rights of way, those are a little
Right.
tougher.
Yeah, that's a whole different story.
Right. But, you know, the typical like Bailey's Hill and the lowlands and the Flash Road playgrounds, things like that, we should probably have acreage in the assessor's records,
Yeah, I agree.
which is all online. So that's
Right.
not that bad.
Right.
Yeah, I can easily find most of those, I think.
I'll start looking about the since I did the demographic stuff about this stuff that he said to look for in terms of a census. I'll see what else I can find in that American Community Survey and look on Department of Labor statistics also, see if I can find anything there.
Okay.
I asked Robin if she knew about a disability plan, and she said she had no idea of one, which was sort of, I can't believe there isn't one somewhere.
Probably nobody's, I know they had, the only thing I can remember is there were complaints from Secretary Galvin's office about boating, which is why the boating initially went downstairs because of handicapped accessibility. But I don't think the town's been sued yet. So that's usually, in my experience, where a lot of these things start, is complaints by disabled people about lack of access. And I don't remember hearing anything in Nahant.
I just think like, it seems to me it would be pretty valuable for a town legally and, you know, for lots of other reasons to have a plan. It seems like they should be required to, but I don't know anything about it, and she doesn't really sound like she does either, so.
I guess we can't assume there isn't one, but we don't know where to look for one, so,
Right.
yeah. Well, I can work on the inventory lists and acreage and maybe fleshing it out a little bit as a starting point from what Dana did. I'm happy to do that.
Great.
I think that's great. And Nancy, thank you for looking at the American Community Survey or whatever demographic information you can find on Nahant.
Yeah, I'll just see from what those two sources he said, what I can come up with.
And what I'll do is I'll track what they're doing with the FEMA money and their MIPA filings, and also at what stage they're at on the bidding for the tennis courts and basketball courts at Flash Road.
Okay.
I spoke to Jen McCarthy, who said she'd help us however we can, so maybe I'll just get back to her and see what she has in terms of all of this stuff.
Oh, and recreation?
Yeah,
Yeah, that'd be helpful too.
all right.
Oh, they're not changing those courts, right? They're just refinishing them? Is that true? Is that what
I
you think?
believe they're rebuilding them.
Rebuilding, yeah, okay.
And
But
there were,
same courts, yeah.
well, somebody told me that Tony had agreed they could have pickleball courts there.
Oh, right, I did hear that as well.
So, you know, there is some a change in the usage, which is something that would make Doug happy. So
All
Margaret,
right, so I'll try to find out those, and I'll keep looking for the MIPA filing for the other improvements that they're doing on the beaches. I think Doggy Beach is included. I don't know about Short Beach, but I'll continue to look at that.
Okay.
is there anything, Margaret, that he said that you think you could move forward on?
Did we lose Margaret?
I'm still here.
Okay.
Nothing.
I'm looking myself to see. Said the environmental analysis needs additional info. I wrote that down, but I don't remember what that means.
Oh, the climate change thing?
Oh, yeah. That might be beyond our expertise, I guess.
Right.
Yeah, I had added the municipal vulnerability in place of the old section was just the floodplain. Hoping that would satisfy the climate thing, but I think we're probably gonna have to flesh that out more.
Mhm.
But the MVP really hasn't, so we're sort of just working on that. Although I don't think I included Short Beach in that.
Does that include the proposed maps of how they think that our land is going to be lost over time, those kind of maps that they use for insurance purposes and stuff? Or is that a different subject? I mean, is that something that would be helpful or?
It probably would be helpful. The thing is, I don't know how much. Let's wait and see what the MIPA filings are for the work they're doing.
Okay.
Because I want to understand how they're characterizing that, and I haven't seen enough yet to know.
Yeah, I guess we could all look at some of those towns too, just to glance over their plans.
I think that's a good idea. Yeah.
Because,
Yeah.
Cohasset. What other coastal towns did you suggest?
Rockport, Swampscott. Those are the big ones.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. Rockport has a really good public rights of way initiative. If anybody has their free time, they have a very good video that they put on their town website about how they got that going in their town. It's quite elaborate. They took it very seriously. So that's nice that they've.
Yeah, and Nahant lately is just, they've been so secretive about it.
I don't understand that, but.
Hey, Margaret, do you want to reach out to the planning board and see what they know of the rights of way or any of the
Sure.
blocked things or something? Do you want
Sure.
to take that on?
Yeah, I can do that.
Okay. Yeah, I think that would be helpful. Even if there's just a liaison that you can sort of we could start relying on from the planning board to help with this.
So who is Cal Hastings the chair?
I don't even know.
Okay, well,
I think so. I think that's right, Nancy. I know Sheila is on it as well. But she wears two hats, so you have to make sure you get her in her planning board time as opposed to her town time, because they're separate. I learned the hard way.
And if you can make heads or tails out of what she tells you, you're a better person than I am.
Yeah, so start with Cal.
Unless Margaret, you know her and get along well with her.
I know, a little better.
Let's leave all that out. We'll leave that out of the minutes, Margaret.
Yeah, leave that out of the minutes, please. Oops, we're being recorded. I probably should have shut that off. Oh, well.
Uh-oh. Rewind.
Yeah, it's one of those settings that just comes up when you use the town Zoom. Oh, well.
Yeah, it's okay. We all love everybody.
Let's hope.
Yes, we do. We do. And everybody should be helpful with this, we hope.
Yeah.
All right, I think that's good.
Okay. Should I move to adjourn?
Okay, and what we'll do before setting up the other next meeting, I'll forward whatever I get from Ralph, and then when I forward that, I'll suggest some meeting dates.
That's good.
Great.
Sounds
All right, great. So there's a motion to adjourn. Is there a second?
I second.
I'm in favor. Nancy,
Ellen? Oh,
Yes.
Ellen,
yes.
Margaret.
Yes.
All right, great.
Good night, everybody.
All right, good night, everybody.
I'm
Thank
glad we got
Thank
it done
you.
as we did. So
I
that's
know.
Awesome.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.